Welcome back to Wisdom of the Buddha. In a world buzzing with voices, opinions, and endless chatter, have you ever wondered how the power of silence can completely change your life? What if the key to your peace, happiness, and personal strength lay not in saying more, but in saying less? Today, we're exploring the wisdom behind silence, an ancient practice that has been revered by Buddhist monks, Zen masters, and sages across the ages. Consider this. How many of our struggles are amplified by words we say, or by words we wish we hadn't said? Words hold the power to heal, but also to harm, to bring clarity or confusion. Imagine if, instead of using words to react, we could find tranquility and answers in silence itself. Join us as we uncover the teachings of Buddhism on the art of silence, bringing ancient lessons to the challenges we face today. We'll delve into stories from Buddhist masters, examples from Zen traditions, and practical guidance to help you embrace silence as a powerful tool in your own life. Let's dive into the world of silence together. In Buddhist philosophy, words are seen as a double-edged sword. They have the capacity to enlighten others and foster understanding, but they can also cause deep emotional harm. The Buddha often taught that speech must be wise, compassionate, and timely. It is said that words should pass through 3 gates before being spoken. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? To better understand this, let's look at a story involving Ananda, one of Buddha's closest disciples. Ananda was known for his curiosity and eagerness to learn. Once, he asked the Buddha why it was that people sometimes feel disturbed even when surrounded by comfort and beauty. The Buddha explained that inner disturbance is often self-created, a result of thoughts and unguarded speech that distract and agitate the mind. He explained to Ananda that while meditation helps clear these disturbances, so too does the restraint of speech. Silence is not merely the absence of speech, but a profound presence of awareness. For centuries, Buddhist monks have practiced silence as a way to cultivate mindfulness and deepen self-awareness. In Buddhist monasteries, noble silence is a key practice. This silence is not an act of isolation, but a means to sharpen the mind, to allow one's inner voice to rise above the external noise. By practicing silence, the monks learn to connect deeply with themselves and the world around them. One of the most well-known stories on the power of silence involves the Buddha himself. Once, while giving a sermon, the Buddha held up a flower and remained silent. The monks watched, puzzled, waiting for him to speak. Finally, one monk, Mahakassapa, simply smiled. The Buddha nodded in approval, acknowledging Mahakassapa's understanding that sometimes the deepest truths cannot be expressed in words. They are understood in the heart in silence. This moment is remembered as the flower sermon and became a cornerstone of Zen Buddhism, teaching that wisdom sometimes arises from quiet contemplation rather than words. In our modern world, we're constantly stimulated by notifications, conversations, and opinions. The pressure to respond instantly and always be on can drain our energy and scatter our attention. By embracing moments of silence, we create mental space for clarity and insight. Imagine a lake. When it is still, you can see to its bottom, but when disturbed, it becomes cloudy. The mind is similar. Silence allows it to settle and become clear. The Buddha once taught a group of monks that, just as a fire cannot burn without fuel, a mind cannot remain agitated without constant input. By reducing the stimuli we take in and by spending time in silence, we gradually extinguish the internal fires of stress and agitation. Let's explore a powerful story from the Zen tradition. There was once a Zen master who received a young student eager to learn about enlightenment. The student came prepared with many questions and doubts, eager to share his thoughts. The master listened for a while, and then, without a word, filled the student's teacup until it overflowed. When the student cried out, "The cup is full, it cannot hold any more," the master gently said, "Like this cup, your mind is full of noise and assumptions. Until you empty it, there is no room for wisdom." Silence is a way of emptying the cup of the mind. It is in those quiet spaces that we begin to see things as they are, rather than through the lens of our own preconceptions. In Buddhist teaching, listening is held in high regard. When we listen to others and to ourselves without interrupting, judging, or preparing responses, we develop patience, compassion, and understanding. The Buddha once said that wise speech is founded on wise listening. This means that before we can speak words of value, we must first truly hear and understand what others and our own hearts are saying. A story illustrating this comes from the time of Emperor Ashoka, a great patron of Buddhism. Ashoka was known for his wisdom and fairness. Once, a subject came to him, angered and ready to argue. Rather than interrupt, Ashoka listened with patience until the man calmed down. Only then did Ashoka speak, offering gentle words that addressed the man's concerns. This act of listening transformed the man's anger into respect and gratitude. Through Ashoka's example, we see how listening with silence can be more powerful than 1,000 well-meaning words. To integrate silence into daily life, Buddhism encourages practices like mindful breathing, journaling, and meditation. Taking even a few minutes each day to sit in silence, observe your thoughts without judgment, and focus on your breath can have a profound effect on your well-being. Here is a simple exercise to try. Before speaking, take 3 mindful breaths. This pause allows you to reflect on whether your words will serve a positive purpose or not. This habit gradually brings peace to conversations and minimizes unnecessary tension. As we draw to a close, remember that silence is not an escape from the world but a tool to understand it more deeply. The Buddha taught that in silence, we find the roots of compassion, wisdom, and inner strength. By practicing silence, we not only bring peace to ourselves but also to those around us. Silence becomes a gift we give to ourselves and the world, fostering understanding and harmony. Thank you for joining Wisdom of the Buddha on this journey into the transformative power of silence. Remember, each moment of silence brings you closer to inner peace, to a life free from needless turmoil. If you found inspiration in this story, support us by sharing and subscribing. May the quiet wisdom within you continue to grow, lighting your path toward true happiness. Words, in the Buddhist view, hold immense power. They can bring comfort, instill confidence, create connections, but they can also injure, cause division, and spark regret. The Buddha taught that words are like seeds. Once spoken, they plant roots in the minds of others, growing over time to impact lives in ways we might never foresee. The concept of right speech, or samavaka, in the Noble Eightfold Path emphasizes the mindful use of language. Right speech asks us to avoid lies, gossip, harshness, and idle chatter, encouraging us to speak with purpose, kindness, and truth. At its heart, this teaching is a reminder of the dual nature of words and the need for balance and self-control in how we communicate. Buddhist philosophy suggests that our words should first be passed through a filter of truth and compassion, Is what we're about to say true, kind, and necessary? Only when these conditions are met should we proceed. To illustrate this, let's delve into the story of a man from a quiet village, and was known for his honesty, though he often spoke harshly under the guise of telling it like it is. He was quick to criticize and rarely held back his opinions, even if it meant hurting those around him. One evening, and attended a sermon by a wise Zen master who spoke on right speech and the lasting impact of words. The master shared a story that caught An's attention about a young apprentice who learned the painful consequences of careless speech. The apprentice was quick to judge and harshly criticize his fellow monks. One day, after his words had deeply hurt a close friend, the master instructed him to take a feather pillow to the top of a mountain, cut it open, and let the feathers scatter in the wind. Confused, the apprentice followed the order, watching as the feathers blew away in every direction. When he returned, the master then instructed him to collect every feather and put them back in the pillow. "But that's impossible," the apprentice protested. "And so it is with your words," replied the master. "Once spoken, they drift and scatter, impossible to retrieve. We must speak carefully, for each word has a consequence." And left the sermon reflecting deeply. The story resonated with him as he realized that his bluntness, while honest, often caused pain. He thought about the people he might have hurt with his words, his family, friends, neighbors, and began to understand the need for balance. The next day, he tried to approach conversations with more patience, choosing his words with care, and noticing the positive effect it had on those around him. It wasn't easy at first. He found himself struggling to hold back his impulses to speak immediately, but slowly he began to feel the rewards of restraint. This transformation mirrored the journey many take in their spiritual paths. In Buddhist teachings, right speech is more than just speaking truthfully. It is about cultivating awareness of the impact our words can have and understanding that silence, when practiced mindfully, is as powerful as speech. The Buddha often taught his disciples to speak only when their words were more valuable than their silence. This practice became particularly relevant to it as he began to realize the deep peace that lay in quiet reflection. By reducing his idle chatter, he experienced moments of true connection with others, finding that silence itself could communicate respect, presence, and understanding. In the next chapter of this journey into silence and the power of mindful solitude, we encounter the story of a powerful king who sought wisdom and inner peace. This tale has existed in various forms throughout Buddhist tradition, a timeless reminder of how true insight often requires stepping away from the trappings of power and wealth. In this version, we meet King Sudha, a ruler known for his intelligence, strategic mind, and unyielding determination. Yet despite his achievements, Sudha found himself increasingly restless, unable to enjoy the luxuries that surrounded him or the adulation of his people. He was burdened by constant noise, the council meetings, the military drills, the bustling market. Every sound seemed to grate against his mind, amplifying his sense of inner chaos. This unrelenting noise became an inescapable reminder of the disquiet within him, leaving him yearning for calm, but unsure how to attain it. One evening, during a rare moment of solitude in the palace gardens, the king heard whispers of a reclusive monk who had attained great peace and insight through years of contemplation and silence in the nearby mountains. Intrigued, he ordered his servants to bring this monk to him, hoping to gain some wisdom that could ease his discomfort. When the monk finally arrived, he was serene and humble, his eyes reflecting a calm that the king had never seen before. The king immediately asked, "Teach me how to find peace. I am surrounded by wealth and power, yet my mind is restless. What must I do?" The monk looked at him thoughtfully and suggested something unexpected. "Abandon the noise. Leave behind the palace and your title. Come to the mountains and live in solitude, if only for a short time. Only by being with yourself can you learn to still your mind." Though initially resistant, the king was desperate enough to consider this strange proposal. After careful planning, he disguised himself in simple robes and traveled alone to the mountains, leaving behind his kingdom and title, if only temporarily. At first, he found himself surrounded by an unfamiliar silence that was both unnerving and strangely compelling. The absence of noise, of the constant barrage of voices and obligations, left him with nothing but his own thoughts. Initially, his mind raced. Memories of past triumphs, worries about his kingdom, and fleeting insecurities all flooded his consciousness. For the first time, he was truly alone with his inner world, a place he had long neglected. Days turned into weeks, and gradually, something within him began to shift. The mountains, with their timeless quiet, taught him to observe rather than react. He noticed the delicate balance of nature, the way the wind gently rustled through the leaves, the steady flow of a nearby stream, and the way the sun rose and set without fail each day. These natural rhythms became his teachers, showing him the importance of letting go, of being present. As he spent time in silent contemplation, he began to feel an inner peace emerge, a calm that grew from within rather than from external circumstances. It was in this mindful solitude that the king started to understand the wisdom of silence and the nature of impermanence, realizing that his worries and desires were transient, just like the sounds of the palace he had left behind. One evening, while sitting quietly by the stream, he found himself reflecting on his role as a king. He understood that his identity and his power were only parts of a larger whole, and that his true essence was beyond titles or riches. This insight filled him with a profound sense of liberation, a clarity he had never felt before. He felt a deep connection to everything around him, and the stillness that he had once feared now brought him profound peace. Through his silence, he discovered compassion, both for himself and for others, realizing how his restlessness had been the result of clinging to fleeting desires and worries. Upon his return to the kingdom, the people noticed a change in their ruler. King Sudha was quieter, his presence more grounded and compassionate. He spoke less, yet his words carried a wisdom that resonated deeply with his people. He no longer sought power for its own sake, but led with a calm assurance, making decisions from a place of inner clarity. Inspired by his transformation, he encouraged his subjects to find moments of quiet in their lives, to connect with nature, and to value inner peace over material gain. His reign became one of prosperity and harmony, not because of military might or economic prowess, but because he led with an understanding that true strength comes from within. This story illustrates a profound truth within Buddhism, that wisdom often requires a shedding of the ego, a willingness to step back from worldly concerns, and a commitment to finding peace within. The king's journey of transformation reflects the Buddhist belief that the mind is the root of all suffering, and that by quieting the mind, we can uncover a deeper, more enduring sense of contentment. Through silence and solitude, he was able to understand that real power is not control over others, but mastery over oneself. This lesson continues to remind us of the invaluable gifts of mindful solitude and the rich, transformative potential that silence offers. In the third chapter, we delve deeper into the concept of finding wisdom in the simplicity of nature, drawing inspiration from the king's time in the mountains. In Buddhism, and particularly in Zen teachings, nature is often regarded as the ultimate teacher, embodying profound lessons through its quiet resilience, interdependence, and timeless rhythms. When one observes nature attentively, with a calm and open mind, they discover that even the smallest elements, a leaf, a stream, a bird, hold powerful insights about life, impermanence, and self-understanding. As the king continued his journey in the mountains, he found himself more attuned to the subtle details of his surroundings. He noticed how the trees stood tall and unwavering, even when battered by fierce winds or cloaked in snow. Each tree had its own life story. Some had deep scars from past storms, others bore broken branches from harsh winters, yet they continued to grow, adapt, and thrive. The king recognized in the trees a quiet strength, a lesson in resilience and acceptance. He began to understand that just as the trees accepted the changing seasons, so too must he accept the ebb and flow of his life. The seasons of hardship, prosperity, and change were as natural and inevitable as the cycles of nature itself. Through this observation, the king began to embody the Buddhist concept of anicca, or impermanence. Everything in nature, leaves falling, rivers flowing, clouds passing, was in a constant state of change. This understanding brought him a deep sense of peace, as he recognized that his worries, desires, and fears were as fleeting as the seasons. By releasing his attachment to permanence, he found freedom from the constant mental unrest that had plagued him in his kingdom. He started to perceive his life, his role as king, and even his existence as part of a larger, ever-changing whole, not separate or superior to the natural world, but intrinsically connected to it. Nature also taught the king about humility and non-judgment. He observed that no part of nature, no tree, river, or mountain, acted out of pride or selfishness. A river flowed tirelessly, nourishing the land and supporting life, without any need for recognition or praise. Similarly, the flowers blossomed and birds sang, simply and without attachment to outcomes. The king understood that he, too, could live in this way, doing his duty, leading his kingdom, and serving his people without ego or the need for acknowledgement. This realization aligned with the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or non-self, which encourages letting go of the ego to find a more connected, peaceful state of being. Another profound lesson came from observing the rocks along the mountain path, their surfaces shaped and smoothed by centuries of wind and water. In Zen thought, rocks symbolize endurance, their very form a testament to the transformative power of patience and time. The king realized that, like the rocks, he too could be shaped by life's challenges, but rather than resisting or hardening, he could allow life to smooth away his rough edges and guide him to a softer, wiser self. This observation nurtured within him a patience he had never known before, a willingness to let life unfold naturally, trusting that each experience was shaping him into a better person and ruler. He also spent hours watching the flowing mountain stream, mesmerized by how it adjusted to every obstacle in its path. When the stream encountered rocks, it did not stop but simply curved around them, adapting fluidly without resistance. The king saw in the water a lesson in adaptability and flexibility. He reflected on how, in his own life, he had often resisted change or reacted harshly to challenges. Yet here was the stream, moving gracefully around each barrier, embodying the Buddhist principle of wu-wei, or non-action, a concept central to both Zen and Taoist philosophies. Non-action does not imply inactivity, but rather a calm acceptance and flow, allowing things to happen without forcing or resisting them. Inspired, the king aspired to lead with this same fluid adaptability, embracing challenges without letting them disturb his inner peace. The king's experiences echoed the story of the Buddha's disciple, Mahakassapa, who once witnessed a similar transformation through nature. Legend has it that Mahakassapa, known for his contemplative nature, spent years in solitude observing the mountains, rivers, and trees. Through his quiet reflection, he developed a deep inner stillness and insight, understanding that the nature around him was an extension of his own being. When the Buddha famously held up a flower before his disciples, it was Mahakassapa alone who smiled, grasping the essence of the Buddha's teaching without a word spoken. This flower sermon represents the silent transmission of wisdom through direct experience, a profound truth that needs no verbal explanation as it is felt and known intuitively. Like Mahakassapa, the king began to understand that real wisdom is often found beyond words, in the quiet moments of communion with the natural world. Gradually, as the king attuned himself to these lessons of simplicity, patience, and resilience, he found himself transformed. He felt a newfound lightness, as if the burdens he had carried for so long were slowly melting away. Nature had taught him not only about the outer world, but about the depths of his own mind. He realized that many of his struggles had arisen from his attempts to control life, to force outcomes according to his own desires. Yet nature reminded him that, just as the sun rises and sets without his intervention, life too has its natural rhythm, and peace lies in surrendering to that rhythm. In Zen, there is a saying, "When the mind is still, the universe surrenders." This resonated deeply with the king. He no longer felt the need to constantly strive or prove himself. Instead, he found joy in the quiet moments, the simple act of being present. He knew that when he returned to his kingdom, he would carry this tranquility with him, guiding his people not through force or control, but through compassion, patience, and an understanding of life's natural flow. Thus, the king's time in the mountains taught him that nature itself is a silent teacher, offering profound wisdom to those willing to observe and listen. In every tree, rock, river, and season, there lies a lesson about life, impermanence, and inner peace. Through nature, the king had discovered his own essence, realizing that just as the mountains stood quietly and the rivers flowed freely, he too could live with a mind that was calm, resilient, and at peace with the ever-changing nature of existence. In understanding inner peace, we delve into how silence can become a powerful tool for self-transformation. Silence, often elusive in today's noisy world, serves as a space where thoughts settle, emotions soften, and deeper insights emerge. In Buddhism, silence is not merely the absence of sound, but the cultivation of an inner stillness that connects one to the present moment, enabling a deeper understanding of oneself and the world. Through silence, we come face to face with our own minds, observing our thoughts without judgment and discovering how true peace resides within. One notable story from Buddhist teachings is that of Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Zen master and peace activist, who spent much of his life promoting mindfulness and inner peace. Thich Nhat Hanh described how he first found true inner stillness during his time as a young monk in Vietnam, practicing walking meditation among the peaceful trees and flowing rivers. He discovered that with each silent, mindful step, he could release tension, worries, and even the burdens of sorrow. The simple act of walking became a meditative practice that anchored him in the present, fostering a profound sense of calm. He taught that peace is every step, a reminder that tranquility is available in each moment, if only we choose to be mindful and silent enough to embrace it. Through his teachings, Thich Nhat Hanh helped millions understand that silence is not an escape, but a way to fully experience life and to encounter one's true nature. Similarly, the story of Ajahn Chah, a renowned Thai meditation teacher, illustrates how silence can be transformative. As a young monk, Ajahn Chah spent years in the forests of Thailand, living a life of solitude and contemplation. It was during this time, amidst the quiet of nature, that he realized the power of silence to reveal the mind's nature. He often said that, "The stiller you are, the calmer things become." He found that, in silence, emotions and thoughts that once seemed overwhelming began to dissipate like clouds in a clear sky. Ajahn Chah used the metaphor of a forest pool. When left undisturbed, the water naturally clears, revealing its depth and beauty. In the same way, he taught that when we sit in silence and still the mind, we can see beyond our immediate worries and glimpse our true, peaceful nature. Ajahn Chah emphasized that inner peace is always present. It is only covered by the constant mud of our thoughts and distractions. For many people today, embracing silence is an opportunity to reconnect with themselves amidst busy lives. Take the story of a young woman named Aiko, who had been overwhelmed by the stresses of her demanding career and personal life. After years of constant activity and the need to prove herself, she reached a point of burnout. Encouraged by a friend, she decided to spend time at a meditation retreat where she would spend days in silence. At first, Aiko found it almost unbearable. The silence seemed loud, bringing to the surface anxieties she had suppressed. Yet, as the days passed, she discovered a gentle rhythm in her breath, a peace in simply observing her thoughts without judgment. By the end of the retreat, she had a newfound sense of clarity and inner calm that stayed with her. Aiko realized that silence had given her the space to understand her true self, beyond the roles and expectations she had carried. This transformation led her to incorporate mindful practices into her daily routine, making time each day to sit quietly, simply listening to her breath, and reconnecting with her inner peace. In a similar vein, the story of a businessman named David shows the impact of mindfulness and silence. David was an executive known for his high stress levels and perfectionist tendencies, which often led to anxiety and tension. After attending a mindfulness workshop, he started practicing silent meditation for a few minutes each morning. At first, he struggled with racing thoughts, impatience, and a sense that silence was unproductive. However, over time, he began to notice small shifts. His mind became less chaotic, and he developed the ability to pause and respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. David experienced a newfound ease in his work and relationships, discovering that silence had allowed him to understand and control his emotions rather than be controlled by them. This transformation was gradual but profound, as he found the inner peace lay not in controlling external circumstances, but in creating a sanctuary of calm within himself. Buddhist teachings speak of this silence as a return to one's true nature. The Buddha once taught that just as a lake reflects the moon perfectly when its waters are still, so too does the mind reflect wisdom and clarity when it is silent. Inner peace, therefore, is not something to be acquired but uncovered. In the quiet, we see beyond the surface of our emotions and habitual thinking, gaining insights into our fears, attachments, and aspirations. Through silence, we learn to understand and let go of these mental patterns, allowing a profound peace to emerge. Another powerful teaching comes from the story of Milarepa, the Tibetan Buddhist yogi who spent years in solitude, meditating in mountain caves. Milarepa's journey to inner peace was filled with hardship, yet he embraced silence as his teacher. Through silence, he faced his deepest fears and desires, confronting the aspects of his mind that held him back. Milarepa's story serves as a reminder that inner peace is often found on the other side of our fears. Silence allows us to confront these fears, to observe them without resistance, and eventually to let them go. His life teaches us that silence does not remove life's challenges, but rather equips us with the resilience and clarity to face them. Ultimately, silence fosters a deep self-awareness that transforms how we relate to ourselves and the world. In embracing silence, individuals find that peace arises not from external achievements or control, but from letting go, from being present with what is. In the words of the Buddha, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. This simple truth encapsulates the power of silence. In the stillness, we discover that peace was within us all along, waiting to be realized. In our modern, fast-paced world, silence has become something of a rarity. We are surrounded by the hum of technology, the constant pinging of notifications, and the relentless demands of work and social life. While advancements have brought us many conveniences, they have also, ironically, distanced us from the simplicity and peace that silence offers. Today, silence can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. However, it is precisely in this environment that silence can be a balm for the restless mind, a gateway to self-reflection, and a path to inner tranquility. Many of us fear silence because it reveals what we often try to escape, the deeper layers of our thoughts, anxieties, and longings. But embracing silence is like giving oneself permission to pause, to step off the treadmill of life, and to reconnect with one's core. This practice aligns with Buddhist teachings on mindfulness and self-awareness. The Buddha encouraged people to spend time in silent reflection, not as a withdrawal from the world, but as a way to engage with it more meaningfully. Silence invites us to observe our minds, to notice the chatter and judgments that usually go unnoticed, and to gently let go of the noise. In silence, we create a space where we can understand ourselves more deeply, allowing us to lead lives that are more aligned with our true values and intentions. Incorporating silence into daily life doesn't require drastic changes, but rather small, intentional practices. For example, journaling in silence each morning can be a powerful way to connect with oneself. Writing without distractions or the noise of others' opinions lets us explore our thoughts in a private, non-judgmental way. This daily practice can reveal patterns in our emotions, desires, and fears. It's not uncommon to find that journaling in silence brings clarity to issues we didn't even realize were affecting us. Some people use this time to write a gratitude journal, which is another Buddhist-inspired practice, focusing the mind on positive aspects of life and fostering a sense of contentment and appreciation. Another effective way to bring silence into our lives is through silent retreats, which can vary in length from a single day to several weeks. These retreats, inspired by the monastic practices in Buddhism, offer structured environments where participants commit to observing silence. For many, the first few hours or days are challenging as the mind resists the absence of distractions. But as the days go by, participants often find themselves feeling more grounded, more at ease with themselves. Without external stimuli, the mind eventually quiets, allowing a deeper sense of clarity to emerge. Silent retreats can be transformative, as they teach us that silence doesn't need to be filled and that our peace isn't dependent on external circumstances. People who have attended silent retreats often speak of a reset, a fresh perspective on life, as they leave the retreat with a renewed understanding of their values and priorities. In daily life, practicing mindful silence, even if just for a few minutes, can have similar benefits. Simple acts like sitting quietly with a cup of tea, taking a mindful walk, or practicing deep breathing can bring us back to the present moment. Zen practitioners often emphasize that such moments are an opportunity to come back home to oneself. By focusing on a single activity without the distractions of technology or conversation, we experience a sense of completeness in the here and now. In Japan, for example, the tea ceremony is traditionally a silent practice where participants fully engage with the sounds, textures, and aromas of tea, a form of meditation that connects them to the moment. In Buddhist philosophy, these practices help cultivate right mindfulness, one of the components of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right mindfulness encourages a calm, focused mind that observes without judgment, allowing us to become aware of our emotions and thoughts without being controlled by them. This form of mindfulness aligns well with the practice of silence, as it emphasizes the value of simply observing the mind. Silence, then, is a tool that helps us cultivate mindfulness, teaching us to see things as they are, without the constant influence of external noise and distractions. To integrate silence, it can also be helpful to set boundaries around our use of technology. For example, we might designate a tech-free time each day, perhaps during meals or before bed. This gives the mind a break from constant stimulation and creates a sanctuary of quiet in which to unwind and reconnect. Many people find that going offline, even for short periods, has a grounding effect, helping them feel more present and less reactive. Such digital detoxes are increasingly popular, as people recognize the value of disconnecting to reconnect with themselves. Another approach is to explore meditation, which has long been a cornerstone of Buddhist practice. Meditation doesn't necessarily require hours of practice each day. Even 5 or 10 minutes can be beneficial. Meditation teaches us to observe our breath, notice our thoughts, and let them pass without attachment. This practice gradually cultivates a stillness of mind that we carry with us throughout the day. Meditation is often seen as a silent refuge, a place where we can retreat from the noise and come back to ourselves. Whether through guided meditations or silent sitting, this practice helps us become comfortable with silence, transforming it from something we avoid into something we embrace. In reflecting on silence, we may also recall the story of the Buddha's own path to enlightenment. After years of searching for truth through various forms of self-discipline and teachings, he ultimately sat in meditation under the Bodhi tree, choosing silence as his final teacher. It was through silence that he found the answers he had been seeking. This story reminds us that silence holds the potential for profound insights and transformation. Just as the Buddha discovered his true nature in stillness, we too can find deeper understanding and inner peace when we allow ourselves to be quiet. Ultimately, the practice of silence encourages a shift in our lives, a move from doing to simply being. In silence, we find a different kind of fulfillment, one that is not based on achievements or productivity, but on being fully present in each moment. As we bring these practices into our lives, we may discover that silence is not an absence but a presence that reconnects us to ourselves and the world around us. Embracing silence is not about isolating ourselves from life. It is about experiencing life more fully, with a sense of peace and clarity that no amount of external success can replace. In the stillness, we come to understand that inner peace is not something to be acquired, but something to be uncovered, something that has always been within us, waiting to be realized. In a world where the pace of life seems relentless, restlessness has become an all too familiar companion for many of us. The mind, constantly pulled in different directions, churns with anxiety, worries, and desires. It can feel as though the more we try to grasp control over our thoughts, the more elusive peace becomes. But in the teachings of Buddhism, we find a powerful antidote to this inner turbulence: stillness. Inner stillness, far from being a passive or idle state, is a dynamic force that has the power to calm the mind, alleviate restlessness, and restore a sense of balance. At its core, stillness is not about doing nothing or escaping from life's challenges, but rather about creating a space where we can engage with our thoughts and emotions without being swept away by them. The Buddha often spoke of the importance of cultivating a mind that is like a calm lake, one that reflects the world clearly without distortion. Restlessness, in contrast, is like the surface of a lake stirred by wind, clouded and turbulent, making it difficult to see anything clearly. By learning to still the mind, we allow the water to settle, revealing a clear reflection of reality. One of the most profound lessons in overcoming restlessness comes from the practice of meditation, which is a central part of Buddhist practice. Meditation offers a way to return to a place of stillness, regardless of the chaos surrounding us. Through mindful breathing and focused attention, we can observe our thoughts as they arise, without identifying with them or reacting impulsively. This creates a space where restlessness begins to dissipate, not because the world changes, but because our relationship to it changes. We learn to see that our thoughts are not permanent and that, like clouds, they pass with time. A poignant example of overcoming restlessness through stillness comes from the story of a young monk named Ananda, who was once overwhelmed with the rapid pace of his responsibilities. As the Buddha's close attendant, Ananda was constantly in motion, running errands, attending to the needs of the community, and engaging in numerous conversations. Despite his devotion, he found himself becoming increasingly restless, as if he were constantly chasing after something that could never be caught. One day, feeling exhausted, Ananda went to the Buddha for guidance. The Buddha, knowing Ananda's restless heart, took him to a quiet forest grove and instructed him to sit in meditation. "Sit still," the Buddha said. "Do not seek to control your mind. Let it be as it is. Watch the thoughts arise and pass away without attachment. Let each thought be like a leaf floating on a stream. Observe it, but do not grasp it." At first, Ananda struggled, his thoughts racing like a whirlwind, but he persisted. Gradually, the frenzy in his mind began to subside. As he sat in stillness, he discovered that his mind could be at peace, even amidst the turbulence of daily life. This story beautifully illustrates how restlessness is often a result of trying to control or fight against our thoughts. Instead of struggling with them, we can embrace stillness and let them pass naturally, without getting caught in their grip. Ananda's experience shows that stillness is not about avoiding the world, but about learning to respond to it with clarity and calmness, rather than reacting impulsively out of restlessness. In modern life, restlessness manifests in many forms, from the anxiety of juggling multiple responsibilities to the constant buzz of social media. It's easy to feel as though we must always be doing something, always moving, always achieving. This sense of busyness often masks the underlying restlessness, which is driven by an unconscious fear of stillness and silence. We might fear that if we stop, we will be forced to confront uncomfortable emotions, unfulfilled desires, or the uncertainties of life. But Buddhist teachings encourage us to embrace stillness as a practice of self-compassion and insight. The story of the Buddha's own enlightenment under the Bodhi tree serves as a powerful reminder of the transformative power of stillness. After years of intense ascetic practices, the Buddha realized that true peace could only be found through stilling the mind and body, not through extreme efforts or self-inflicted pain. He chose to sit in quiet meditation, where, through deep stillness, he came to understand the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. In the same way, we too can find relief from restlessness by cultivating moments of stillness throughout our day. One simple practice is to set aside time for silent reflection, even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes. In those moments, we can focus on our breath and let go of the constant pressure to do. It's not about achieving something or solving a problem in that time, but about simply being present with ourselves. This practice can be done anytime, whether at the beginning of the day, during a break, or before bed. Over time, these moments of stillness accumulate and begin to reshape how we approach the rest of our day. Another approach is the practice of walking meditation, which is common in many Buddhist traditions. Unlike traditional meditation, which is done sitting still, walking meditation involves mindful, slow, deliberate steps. The focus is on each movement, each breath, and the sensation of the feet touching the earth. This practice helps cultivate a sense of groundedness, especially when we are feeling restless. It reminds us that even in motion, we can remain still, centered, and aware. A modern example of overcoming restlessness through stillness can be found in the story of a successful businesswoman named Maya. She had reached the pinnacle of her career, with all the material success one could imagine, but despite her achievements, she found herself plagued by anxiety and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. She was constantly striving for more recognition, more accolades, more success, but no matter how much she achieved, she still felt restless. She sought advice from a meditation teacher who encouraged her to practice sitting meditation, even for just a few minutes each day. At first, Maya resisted the practice, believing that her restless mind could never be tamed. But with time, she began to notice a shift. Instead of constantly seeking external validation, she found herself beginning to turn inward. As she spent more time in stillness, she realized that the restlessness she felt was not caused by her external circumstances, but by an inner craving for validation and control. Through meditation, she learned to simply observe her thoughts without attaching to them. This realization was liberating. Maya no longer needed to constantly prove herself. The stillness she found within herself became a source of deep satisfaction. This story illustrates that restlessness is not something to be avoided or fought against, but something that can be transformed through mindfulness and stillness. By learning to sit with our discomfort and embrace silence, we begin to see that the peace we seek is already within us. It is not dependent on external circumstances or accomplishments, but on our ability to return to the present moment and let go of the relentless push for more. Ultimately, overcoming restlessness through stillness is about reclaiming our power over our own minds. It's about recognizing that we are not our thoughts, and that we do not need to be driven by the constant noise of the world. Through stillness, we can find a deeper sense of peace, clarity, and contentment, no matter what external challenges we may face. Just as a calm lake reflects the world with perfect clarity, a still mind reflects life's true nature, free from the distortions of restlessness. In our fast-paced world, where speaking and acting quickly is often equated with success, the idea of speaking less and listening more can seem counterintuitive. Yet, if we examine the teachings of Buddhism and apply them to modern life, we can see that true success often arises from silence, mindfulness, and deep listening. By practicing restraint in speech and cultivating an awareness of the present moment, we are able to foster a more thoughtful, compassionate, and effective approach to both our careers and relationships. This philosophy is not about repressing our voice, but rather choosing our words with greater care and listening with the intent to truly understand. In the Buddhist tradition, one of the key components of ethical behavior is right speech, which emphasizes speaking truthfully, kindly, and purposefully. Right speech encourages us to avoid harmful language, whether it is gossip, harsh words, or deceitful talk, and instead promotes communication that uplifts and benefits others. By practicing right speech, we create an environment of respect and harmony, which in turn leads to more meaningful and successful interactions, both professionally and personally. This practice of speaking less but with greater intention can lead to more effective communication, where the focus is on clarity, understanding, and empathy rather than on impressing others or dominating a conversation. Listening, too, plays an integral role in this practice. Often, in both our careers and relationships, we find ourselves eager to speak, to express our opinions, or to offer solutions. However, when we fail to truly listen, we miss out on valuable insights and opportunities for connection. Listening, in the Buddhist sense, is an act of mindfulness and presence. It is not just hearing the words someone else speaks, but also understanding the underlying emotions and intentions behind those words. Through deep listening, we open ourselves to others and foster an atmosphere of mutual respect and collaboration. This is especially important in the workplace, where understanding the needs and concerns of colleagues, clients, or superiors can make all the difference in achieving success. To illustrate this, let us turn to the story of an individual whose life exemplifies the power of silence and mindful listening in achieving success. The story is about a renowned entrepreneur named Covey, who, despite coming from a humble background, became one of the most respected figures in the tech industry. Early in his career, Covey faced many challenges and setbacks. However, he soon realized that in order to be truly successful, he needed to embrace silence as a tool for growth. Covey was known for his exceptional ability to listen more than he spoke during meetings and discussions. He would sit quietly, absorbing the ideas of others, and then speak only when he felt he had something valuable to contribute. He never rushed to give an opinion, but instead, he asked questions that would deepen the conversation, encouraging others to share their insights and perspectives. This approach paid off in more ways than one. Covey's ability to listen carefully allowed him to identify opportunities that others missed. His team, sensing that their ideas were truly being heard, felt more motivated and invested in the company's success. Clients and business partners respected him for his thoughtful responses and his tendency to listen with genuine curiosity rather than offering immediate solutions. Covey's silence became a powerful tool in his success, as it allowed him to make informed decisions, build strong relationships, and create a company culture that valued collaboration over competition. This concept is deeply rooted in Buddhist teachings. In the Buddhist tradition, silence is not just the absence of sound, but a form of active awareness. The Buddha, for example, often practiced noble silence when necessary, allowing his actions and presence to speak louder than words. The teachings of the Buddha emphasize the importance of silence, not only in meditation, but also in daily life. Silence is seen as a way to clear the mind of distractions, allowing for greater clarity and focus. In the same way, Covey's silence allowed him to process the information around him, to filter out the noise, and to respond with wisdom rather than reacting impulsively. In relationships, this practice of listening and speaking less can be equally transformative. In many relationships, both personal and professional, miscommunication and misunderstandings arise when we speak too quickly or fail to listen attentively. Buddhist teachings on mindfulness remind us that true communication comes from being present with the other person, understanding their needs, and responding with kindness and empathy. By cultivating a mindful approach to communication, we create space for others to express themselves fully, and for us to respond in a way that is both thoughtful and compassionate. This not only deepens relationships, but also fosters an environment where trust and understanding can flourish. A story from the Buddha's own life provides an excellent example of how silence and listening can lead to profound understanding and success in relationships. One day, a man came to the Buddha, angry and upset, and began to hurl insults at him. The Buddha, instead of reacting with anger or defending himself, listened in complete silence. He allowed the man to express his frustration without interruption. After some time, the Buddha simply asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man was taken aback, not knowing how to answer. The Buddha continued, "The insults you are offering are like a gift. If I do not accept them, they remain with you." The man, realizing the Buddha's wisdom, was filled with remorse and left in silence. In this story, the Buddha's ability to remain silent and listen with understanding not only diffused the situation, but also taught the man a powerful lesson about the nature of anger and attachment. This story highlights the power of silence in diffusing conflict and fostering understanding. By choosing not to respond immediately, and instead listening with compassion, the Buddha was able to transform a potentially volatile situation into an opportunity for teaching and growth. In the same way, in our careers and relationships, by practicing the art of silence and listening, we can build stronger connections, resolve conflicts more effectively, and create a more harmonious and successful environment. In modern life, where distractions abound and the pressure to speak and act quickly is constant, it can be easy to forget the value of silence. Yet, by embracing silence as a practice, whether through mindful listening, taking time to reflect before speaking, or creating space for others to express themselves, we can unlock new levels of success and fulfillment in our careers and relationships. The teachings of Buddhism remind us that true wisdom and success come not from speaking more, but from speaking wisely and listening deeply. In this way, silence becomes not a void but a source of insight, a tool for understanding, and a pathway to greater success. In the Buddha's teachings, speech plays a critical role in shaping our lives and our relationships with others. The Buddha placed great emphasis on the power of words, teaching that speech should be mindful, truthful, kind, and purposeful. In Buddhism, speech is considered one of the key actions that can either lead to liberation or entrapment in suffering. This profound understanding of the significance of speech comes from the Buddha's deep awareness of how words can impact not only the individual, but also the world around them. At the heart of the Buddha's teachings on speech is the concept of right speech, which is one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right speech, as outlined by the Buddha, is the practice of speaking in a way that aligns with ethical conduct and promotes harmony and understanding. Right speech consists of four main guidelines: avoiding false speech, avoiding slanderous speech, avoiding harsh speech, and avoiding idle chatter. These guidelines are not just about refraining from harmful words, but also about cultivating speech that is beneficial to others and to ourselves. Through mindful speech, we create a more compassionate, peaceful world, and we ensure that our words contribute to our spiritual growth and not to our suffering. The Buddha taught that false speech, which includes lying or intentionally misleading others, is a form of unwholesome speech that leads to confusion and harm. By speaking the truth, we build trust and create an environment where others can rely on our words. Slanderous speech, which involves spreading rumors or speaking maliciously about others, only serves to divide and cause suffering. The Buddha cautioned against this, encouraging his followers to speak in ways that foster unity and understanding rather than division. Harsh speech, which includes yelling, cursing, or speaking in a hurtful manner, is another form of harmful speech that the Buddha warned against. Such speech not only harms the person to whom it is directed but also poisons the speaker's own mind, leading to greater agitation and unrest. Finally, idle chatter, which involves speaking without purpose or speaking excessively about trivial matters, was seen by the Buddha as a distraction from the cultivation of mindfulness and inner peace. By avoiding idle chatter and speaking with intention, we bring greater clarity and focus into our lives. Through these teachings, the Buddha highlighted the fact that words have a tremendous power to shape our experiences and the experiences of others. Just as a gentle breeze can soothe a parched land, kind and mindful words can bring comfort and healing. Conversely, like a harsh storm that tears at the trees, words spoken in anger or ignorance can create destruction and suffering. In this sense, speech becomes a reflection of our internal state. When we speak with mindfulness, we are also practicing inner awareness as we choose our words carefully with compassion and wisdom. In Buddhist practice, speech is deeply connected to silence. Silence is not seen as the absence of sound, but rather as a space in which true understanding and wisdom can arise. It is in silence that we can listen, not only to others, but also to ourselves, to the truth that lies within. Silence allows us to pause, reflect, and cultivate mindfulness before speaking. By practicing silence, we also learn to discern when it is better to remain silent, understanding that sometimes words are not necessary, and that an action or quiet presence can be more powerful than any spoken phrase. There is a famous story in Buddhist tradition that illustrates the power of silence and speech. Once, a man came to the Buddha full of anger and accusations. He yelled at the Buddha, criticizing him for various things. The Buddha listened quietly, offering no response. After some time, the man grew silent, unsure of what to say next. The Buddha then asked him, "If someone gives you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, confused, replied, "It belongs to the one who gave it." The Buddha then explained, "Your anger and your harsh words are like a gift you are trying to give me. If I do not accept them, they remain with you." In this story, the Buddha demonstrates how silence, combined with wisdom, can transform a potentially hostile situation into one of understanding. By not responding with anger or retaliation, the Buddha was able to teach the man a valuable lesson about the nature of anger and how we are not obliged to accept the negative emotions of others. This story highlights the Buddha's belief in the power of silence, not as a form of avoidance, but as a means of protecting oneself from the harmful effects of negative speech. In the same way, silence in our own lives can act as a shield from the chaos of the world. By practicing silence, we can create the space needed to respond with compassion and wisdom, rather than reacting impulsively and perpetuating harm. The Buddha also recognized that mindful speech and silence are interconnected with the practice of meditation. Meditation is the foundation of mindfulness, and it is through meditation that we learn to observe our thoughts, words, and actions without judgment. Through the practice of meditation, we can become more attuned to our inner states and more mindful of how we communicate with others. When we meditate, we cultivate a quiet, peaceful mind that can influence the way we speak and interact with the world. As we learn to quiet the mind in meditation, we become more conscious of the impact of our speech and more able to practice right speech in our daily lives. In the Buddhist tradition, there is also the practice of noble silence, which is often observed by monks and nuns during periods of retreat or deep meditation. Noble silence is a form of silence that goes beyond the mere absence of speech. It is an intentional act of restraint, allowing the practitioner to focus fully on their inner experience and spiritual practice. This type of silence is not about avoidance or repression, but about creating space for deeper understanding and inner peace. It is in these moments of silence that the practitioner can cultivate a deeper connection with their own mind and with the world around them. Through these teachings, the Buddha provides us with a blueprint for how to live mindfully and ethically through our speech. The practice of mindful speech not only benefits our own spiritual growth, but also contributes to the welfare of others. By speaking with intention, kindness, and truth, we create an environment where understanding, harmony, and compassion can flourish. At the same time, the practice of silence allows us to reflect deeply, to listen attentively, and to discern when it is appropriate to speak and when it is better to remain silent. In this way, the Buddha's teachings on speech and silence invite us to cultivate a balanced and thoughtful approach to communication, one that leads to greater peace, wisdom, and fulfillment in our lives. In today's fast-paced, constantly connected world, it can feel nearly impossible to find moments of quiet. The noise around us, both external and internal, can overwhelm our senses and cloud our minds. From the buzz of social media to the hum of city streets, the relentless pace of modern life often drowns out the silence that is so crucial for our mental well-being. However, the teachings of Buddhism offer us a path toward finding peace in the midst of chaos, emphasizing the importance of mindfulness and stillness in our everyday lives. In Buddhism, the concept of impermanence teaches us that everything is in a constant state of change. This includes the noise and distractions that surround us. Just as waves on the surface of the ocean constantly rise and fall, the noise of the world will come and go. What matters is how we respond to it. The Buddha himself often emphasized the need for inner stillness in order to cultivate true peace. In his teachings, he said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." This highlights the power we have to shape our experiences, not by trying to control the external world, but by cultivating a calm and focused mind, regardless of external circumstances. Finding moments of quiet in a noisy world starts with the understanding that silence is not something we need to search for in the world around us, but rather something we must create within ourselves. By turning our attention inward and practicing mindfulness, we can begin to find stillness, even amidst the chaos. Silence, in this sense, is not just the absence of sound, but the presence of awareness and presence. It is the space in between thoughts, the moment of pause that allows us to reconnect with our deeper selves. One of the most accessible ways to find quiet in a noisy world is through the practice of mindful breathing. The Buddha often taught that by focusing on the breath, we can anchor ourselves in the present moment, cutting through the noise of the mind and the external environment. A simple mindfulness exercise to practice this involves sitting in a comfortable position, closing your eyes, and taking a few deep breaths. Focus on the sensation of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. Notice the rise and fall of your chest or the feeling of the air moving through your nostrils. If your mind wanders, gently bring your focus back to your breath without judgment. This practice can be done anytime, anywhere, and provides a brief yet powerful retreat from the external noise. Another practical tip is to set aside designated times each day for silence, even in small intervals. You can begin by carving out 5 to 10 minutes in the morning or evening to simply sit in silence, free from distractions. This can be a time to reflect, meditate, or simply observe the thoughts and sensations that arise. Over time, you can gradually increase this period of silence as you become more comfortable with the practice. Even in the busiest moments, it is possible to create small pockets of quiet that allow us to reconnect with our true nature. Incorporating mindfulness into daily activities is another powerful way to bring silence into our lives. For example, when walking, try to bring full attention to each step, noticing the sensation of your feet touching the ground, the rhythm of your movement, and the sounds of the environment. In this way, you are not trying to block out the noise, but rather cultivating an awareness that allows you to remain centered amidst the activity around you. This practice, known as walking meditation, helps you experience the present moment with greater clarity and peace, even while the world continues to spin around you. Buddhist monastic traditions offer another insight into living with more silence in a noisy world. Many Buddhist monks and nuns spend significant periods of their lives in seclusion or in monasteries, where they practice noble silence, an intentional silence that allows them to focus deeply on their meditation and spiritual practice. This silence is not just the absence of speech, but a conscious choice to limit external distractions and engage in deep self-reflection. For instance, Thich Nhat Hanh, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, often teaches that silence is not merely about refraining from speaking, but about creating a space where we can truly listen, not only to others, but to ourselves. In his teachings, he emphasizes the importance of deep listening, which allows us to hear both our own inner voice and the voices of others in a way that brings clarity and peace. While it may not always be feasible to completely isolate ourselves from the noise of the world, we can take inspiration from the monk's practice of mindfulness and silence, integrating small moments of stillness into our lives. In fact, Many mindfulness experts suggest taking regular breaks from technology to recalibrate our minds. The constant notifications, messages, and updates that bombard us throughout the day can keep us in a state of constant mental activity, making it difficult to find the stillness we need to recharge. Try setting boundaries with your phone or computer, turning off notifications, and limiting your screen time. This can help reduce the mental clutter that often accompanies our digital lives and create space for deeper reflection and connection with the present moment. One of the most effective ways to cultivate a quiet mind in a noisy world is through the practice of gratitude. The Buddha taught that cultivating an attitude of gratitude can shift our perspective from one of scarcity to one of abundance. When we are grateful for the simple things in life, such as the warmth of the sun, the beauty of nature, or the kindness of others, we begin to see the world through a lens of appreciation rather than distraction. In the midst of all the noise, we can find peace in the present moment by focusing on what we have rather than what we lack. Gratitude is a powerful tool that helps us silence the mind's endless chatter and bring our attention to the richness of life as it is. There is a famous story from the life of the Buddha that beautifully illustrates the power of silence in a noisy world. Once, a man came to the Buddha, seeking answers to his many questions. He asked, "What is the secret to peace and happiness?" The Buddha, instead of giving a direct answer, simply pointed to the silence of the natural world around them. He gestured to the trees, the flowing river, and the vast sky. "The world speaks in many ways," the Buddha said, "but the true answer lies in silence." In that moment, the man understood that the key to peace was not found in constant seeking or accumulating knowledge, but in cultivating the stillness to listen deeply to the world as it is. Living in a noisy world can feel overwhelming, but with the right tools and mindset, we can find moments of peace and stillness amidst the chaos. By practicing mindfulness, creating intentional silence in our lives, and learning to listen deeply, we can begin to quiet the noise and reconnect with the deeper truths that lie within us. Silence, when practiced with awareness, is not just the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. Through these practices, we can cultivate a quieter, more peaceful mind, regardless of the noise that surrounds us. As we come to the end of this exploration into the power of silence, it's important to reflect on how silence, far from being just the absence of sound, becomes a profound tool for personal transformation, inner peace, and spiritual growth. In Buddhism, silence is not a mere avoidance of speech. It is a deliberate practice that nurtures wisdom, clarity, and deeper understanding. It is in the stillness where we begin to hear the voice of our true nature, beyond the noise of the world and the chatter of the mind. The lasting impact of silence is that it helps to peel away the layers of distraction and illusion, allowing us to see life more clearly and live more fully. One of the central tenets of Buddhist practice is the cultivation of mindfulness, which includes the ability to be present in the moment and observe the world without attachment. Silence plays an integral role in this practice. By reducing the noise that typically fills our lives, both external and internal, we create space to engage with life in a more mindful, meaningful way. The Buddha himself emphasized the importance of quietude, often retreating to solitude in nature, not to escape from life, but to deepen his awareness and understanding of it. Through his teachings, we learn that silence is a mirror that reflects our inner world. In the quiet, we begin to discern the thoughts, habits, and patterns that shape our actions, allowing us to make conscious choices that lead to greater harmony. One well-known Buddhist story illustrates the profound impact of silence on personal transformation. The story is about the famous monk, Venerable Ajahn Chah, who once instructed his students to meditate in complete silence for an extended period. At first, many of them struggled, feeling discomfort and restlessness. They were used to the busy lives of the world, filled with words, opinions, and constant activity. But as the days passed, they began to notice something remarkable. The silence started to reveal the truth of their inner struggles. The constant chatter in their minds began to quiet, and they were able to see their own desires, fears, and attachments more clearly. It was in this space of silence that they realized how much of their suffering was caused by their own unexamined thoughts and reactions. The peace they had been seeking was not in the outside world, but within themselves. By embracing silence, they found the path to liberation from the distractions of the mind. The Buddha's teachings on right speech also provide invaluable insights into the role of silence in personal growth. In the Dhammapada, a collection of the Buddha's sayings, he advises that we speak only when necessary, and when we do, our words should be kind, truthful, and beneficial. The discipline of speaking less and listening more creates space for deeper reflection and understanding, both of ourselves and others. When we allow silence to govern our communication, we begin to listen more attentively, not just to the words being spoken, but to the underlying emotions, intentions, and wisdom being conveyed. This shift in listening, coupled with the restraint of unnecessary speech, can transform our relationships and our interactions with the world around us. Another powerful example from Buddhist tradition that highlights the lasting impact of silence is the story of the great monk, Milarepa. Milarepa was born into a wealthy family, but after suffering a deep betrayal, he turned to black magic to seek revenge. As a result, he fell into despair and guilt. Seeking redemption, Milarepa found his way to the hermitage of his teacher, Marpa, who was known for his strict and challenging teachings. Milarepa was instructed to spend many years in silence, in solitary meditation, reflecting on his past deeds and the consequences of his actions. Through this silence, he came to understand the deep connection between his suffering and the pain he had caused others. It was in the quietude of his retreat that Milarepa experienced a profound transformation, ultimately attaining enlightenment. His story is a testament to how silence can be a powerful tool for introspection and healing, allowing us to break free from the patterns of our past and embrace a new, awakened way of being. The Buddha himself often withdrew into silence, not as a means of escape, but as a way to recharge and reconnect with his spiritual center. In the Tipitaka, the earliest and most authoritative Buddhist scriptures, it is recorded that the Buddha spent considerable time in quiet meditation, contemplating the nature of suffering, impermanence, and the path to liberation. This practice of silence, even in the midst of his profound work in teaching and guiding others, was essential to his own clarity and peace. It allowed him to act from a place of deep awareness, instead of being swept away by the turbulence of external events. In the modern world, silence can be just as transformative. In a time when distractions are constant, taking the time to step away from the noise allows us to reconnect with our deeper sense of purpose and clarity. People who incorporate silent practices into their lives, whether through meditation, mindful walks, or simply setting aside time each day to reflect, report significant improvements in their mental health, emotional balance, and overall sense of well-being. The lasting impact of silence is that it offers us a refuge from the chaos of modern life, allowing us to tune into what truly matters. It helps us break free from the cycle of constant consumption and constant doing, and instead invites us to just be. The key takeaway here is that silence is not something to be feared or avoided, but something to be embraced as a means of self-discovery, healing, and peace. It is in the silence that we encounter our deepest truths, and it is through silence that we can cultivate the wisdom and compassion necessary to navigate the challenges of life. As the Buddha taught, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Silence is the doorway to that peace. It is in the stillness that we are able to hear our true nature and align ourselves with the deeper rhythms of life. As you reflect on these teachings, I invite you to consider how silence might become a part of your own journey. Whether it's through short moments of mindfulness each day, a dedicated period of quiet reflection, or perhaps even a retreat into nature, silence has the potential to profoundly change the way we experience ourselves and the world. The lasting impact of silence is that it allows us to find peace, clarity, and wisdom in the midst of our busy lives. By embracing silence, we can transform our relationship with ourselves and others and begin the journey toward greater self-awareness, compassion, and inner peace. It is in the quiet that we find our true voice. It is in the stillness that we discover who we really are. As our journey comes to an end, we invite you to carry the lessons of silence and inner peace with you. Imagine the calm, the clarity, and the strength that lie within, waiting to be discovered through moments of quiet. Remember, true wisdom and strength are found not in noise but in stillness. If you enjoyed this story and felt inspired by the power of silence, support our community by liking, sharing, and subscribing to Wisdom of the Buddha. Join us on this path of self-discovery and inner peace. May each moment of silence bring you closer to the truth within. Thank you for watching, and until next time, may peace and enlightenment light your way.